I found myself in a vast, multi-layered parking lot. At least that was my impression. A large concrete building at any rate. So, very much then, a representation of creation, with its various levels and such. I was with a large group of individuals, and they were following me up and down and every which way throughout this large creation representing a construct. It seems that as we proceeded, we were constantly coming upon barriers that were easy enough to walk under or step over, but evidently represented apparent restriction and limitation. At each barrier, the group would stop, and it would fall on me to wrench the barrier from the wall and discard it, and we would continue on. This would go on for quite a time. Our direction seemed rather random. Sometimes we would be ascending, sometimes descending, but always confronted with barriers that I would remove, that allowed then our continued passage. It was as though these barriers were self-decided limitations in creation for these individuals, and so their experience and positions in life would be cause and effect agreements of equal limitation. So I was in a sense removing this group's restrictions, or revealing to them information or knowledge of how creation works that they could understand, and thus decide to let go of the agreements that had effectively barred their ability to move more freely around creation and see and become aware of more. The barriers, very feeble really, as I said, you could easily get past them, as removing of self-imposed restrictions and agreements is simply the decision to do so. Throughout this experience, there was a woman accompanying us, and she was constant in her contentions that we shouldn't be doing this, and how we must not remove these barriers, etc. Interestingly, this woman was in the form of my mother Gwen, although I had the impression it was not her, more the influence working through her or adopting her form. And as the group here were inclined to follow my lead in this activity, it fell on me to listen and agree to the influence or not, and I chose to ignore her. Also, as we went throughout the creation levels, only one other individual would we encounter: the mass-murdering reptilian controller and former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. As we were ascending a set of steps, he would suddenly appear on the level we were ascending to, and stood there glaring at us. I'm uncertain if he thought that his mere presence would be enough to halt our passage, but we simply brushed past him, affording him the disregard that he deserved. I could tell that he was a Tony, but he was only just recognizable, for he looked every bit as distorted as the life choices which he had decided and agreed upon. He was hunched over and looked very much gargoyle-like in his facial features. His skin colour an unpleasant green, almost goblin-like. He would mutter and mumble as we swept by him, and I would simply respond to him by telling him that his time was almost over, his karma due, him and all his ill-intended dark force ilk. At one point, we all made it to the roof, with a view of the sky, so this was rather a promising situation, standing on top of all creation in essence. Perhaps this group now were more at liberty to move with greater freedom throughout the life levels on the real side. On the roof there was another large group assembled, and they all seemed to be holding crystals in their hands, and crystals very much represent the ethereal level, so perhaps this was indeed where we stood at this moment, although as these people held their crystals, they would proclaim how it was that they held them in mourning for a country on earth that had been completely destroyed by some dark force controller created event. The country was Iceland. I wonder if some scheme of the dark forces is in effect to rob people of the opportunity of recognizing and standing with the ears, a distraction that may misdirect their focus somehow. For Iceland could very well be more meaning is land, and these ethereal dwelling individuals on top of the roof of this creational representing building were mourning then their missed opportunity. Maybe something gets subliminally planted in the subconscious etheric level and ethereal vehicles that has this adverse consequence. The scene skipped, and I was on ground level now, and in a street setting. The weather very cold to the extreme, everything coated in a layer of ice. I was again with another group, and we actually were standing on a frozen river and in the company of a woman who had the all-awareness standing real isness of a real guide. She presented us all with a chart, and it depicted all the real guides that we have come to recognize and be aware of. Interestingly, among these guides were 3 recent and new additions. They were all female, dressed in white garments, and were reptilian. For all these guide pictures portrayed them from the upper chest upwards, and the faces, and you could clearly see the 3 new guides as having lizard-like snouts and faces. So this was rather a confirmation that there are some very aware reptilians out there at this moment, and these 3 excelling to the extent that they may even recognize the is and assume positions as guides themselves. I'm uncertain if they would keep their reptilian forms as guides. Maybe they will, but perhaps it was more for my benefit that they were depicted in this way. that this would draw my attention to the fact, for had they been in more human forms, I'd never have realized they were former reptilians. The group would now depart, but not before the guide mentioned great floods that were going to be sweeping the earth soon. The sense was that these were more dark force created cataclysms. She also warned us to stay off the ice, and so we removed ourselves from the frozen river as we went on our way. Perhaps this was a warning of how we all are on thin ice every moment, for even those on their process of awareness must always check their intent, focus, and attention, what they are thinking, feeling, etc. A constant going through the 5 bodies to ensure everything is aligned with the real intent and awareness, as being in creation is always the razor's edge, and this opportunity should never be taken for granted. Time is running out also, and so it can be certainly said that everybody in creation always walks on thin ice.
So, okay, so we've got some warnings there, and Iceland is getting warmer or colder, whatever, and we've got 3 reptilian gals. That's cool. All right, everything's cool, everything's fine. So whatever, whoever steps up, they're just body types. So we'll see what happens here. Another Noah's big flood, maybe. Well, yeah, they're always working on things to do funny stuff. So at least we have a heads up here, and it's all about awareness. So yes, you have to go through it to figure it out, which is good. And all these experiences are very, very good. They validate a lot. And you're seeing also the other stuff, the catastrophes and whatever that are coming up and present. And going back to your first experience there with the 3 reptilians, that's really cool. Etc. All this coming together, how it is, it's just very, very good, Kevin. So lucky you, you get to be like the galactic journalist here and on the scene in the war zone, etc. And so you're willing to do it. That's great.